Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. With you, Khalid Saleh, the president of the media office at the Syrian Coalition. Here is a summary of the situation in our daily briefing for today, Saturday, the 21st of December 2013. Yesterday, the United Nations held meetings with the United States and Russia in regards to convening the Geneva Conference. The Syrian Coalition appreciates the efforts by the United Nations and its attempt to find a political and peaceful solution for the situation in Syria, for the crisis in Syria, a crisis which the Assad regime and its allies have been responsible for. The statements that were issued by the United Nations that there is no agreement on the participation of Iran until now in the Geneva Conference. The Syrian Coalition has been very clear on the fact that we reject the participation of Iran. We consider Iran to be the sole responsible force, well, one of the main responsible forces for the criminal gang that is in Syria and continuing to kill the Syrian people. The Iranian government continues to send money, they continue to send militias to keep the criminals of the Assad regime in control in Syria. Thus, any discussion about the participation in Iran must be preceded by Iran withdrawing all of its militias that are fighting next to the armed forces of the Assad regime, whether these are the Iranian militias, the Lebanese militias, or the Iraqi militias. The Iranian government must stop all financial support for the Assad regime. The Iranian government must also clearly commit to the goals and the principles of the Geneva Conference, that the goal from the Geneva Conference is the full implementation of the Geneva Communique, and that the goal from the Geneva Conference is the transition of powers from the Assad regime into a transitional governing body that represents the Syrian people. Yesterday, we also saw the statements by the French president, Mr. Francois Hollande, which in them he clearly expressed the position of his country in terms of the participation, in terms of the Geneva Conference. It is very clear that there must be a tremendous amount of pressure applied on the Assad regime by the international community to really adhere to and officially announce the goal from the Geneva Conference, which is the full implementation of the Geneva Communique, and which entails and details the formation of a transitional governing body with full powers, executive, legislative powers, presidential powers. If those who are trying to organize the conference, whether it's the United States, Russia, the UN, have not been able to reach an agreement about the participation of Iran, because Iran has not been credible and did not agree to the principles of the Geneva Communique, one must remind everybody that the Assad regime, and until now, did not agree that the goal from the Geneva Conference is the full implementation of the Geneva Communique. And as a matter of fact, those from the regime, leading personalities from the regime, whether it's Bashar al-Assad himself, Walid al-Muallim, the foreign minister, Omran al-Zarbi, the communication minister, they all came out on several occasions to say that they reject the principles and the basis for the Geneva Conference, and to say very clearly that the regime will not transitional power into a transitional governing body. Of course, all of this happens at the same time that the Assad crimes against innocent civilians continue. The regime yesterday killed 106 fallen heroes on Friday as a result of using explosive barrels, specifically in the countryside of Aleppo. This comes at the same time that the Russian government did not allow for a presidential declaration condemning the use of explosive barrels against innocent civilians, against school kids who were going basically in the schoolyards, killing innocent civilians. This escalation in violence by the Assad regime shows that the Assad regime and its allies are not sincere and are not serious in finding a political solution. They continue to use a military solution against innocent civilians who are merely asking for dignity, for freedom, and for democracy. Finally, and our final point for today, the FSA, the Free Syrian Army, controlled yesterday the building of the Kindi Hospital in Aleppo. Although it's a civilian point, however, it has been turned into a military point. It was a center for the Shabiha of Assad to attack nearby areas. It's also located in a strategic location that connects the city of Aleppo to the countryside, the northern countryside of Aleppo. These are the advancements of the FSA that continue on daily basis, showing that the Assad regime, while it puts out a propaganda that's able to recapture Halab, the reality on the ground goes against that. That the FSA has been able to secure the city of Aleppo. The FSA continues to secure different areas also in the countryside of Damascus. Thank you for attending.